can't say what the nature of the allegation is because it might inhibit the investigations that the police, I think, are going to undertake.
Since it closed in 2003, the Empire Hotel has been a blight on Hunter Street. It's been repeatedly set on fire and home to a constant stream of squatters. The complex has also become a hotspot for illegal drug use and antisocial behaviour. But hope is on the horizon, with the site being put up for sale after its Sydney-based owner went into receivership.
We need an owner to take care of the premises so that there's no antisocial behaviour, keep it locked and hopefully go ahead and develop it.
Newcastle City Council has already approved a development application for the site, a fact it hopes will aid the sale. The real estate agent says 7 applications from potential buyers have been received. Meanwhile, there's been no movement on Surf House since Council approved a development for the site around 2 months ago.
There are people saying they were going to take legal action against the decision. There's a finite time for that. That time will elapse, and I would then expect to see the developer go ahead.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
It will be something that we have waited for a very long time. Mabel particularly has had an increase in clients, and this is going to make a huge difference to each of them and their families.
The idea is that if there's art there, vandals will stay away. It's the latest plan from Newcastle Council to try to combat a growing graffiti problem.
If we put the message out to respect our city and that we're trying to renew Newcastle, it really does move people along, and that they're much more apt to take notice of those artworks and not really vandalise other people's art.
And it's murals like this one on the old Lucky Country Hotel that are intended to get that message across. Since Council launched its graffiti hotline in July, it's already received 344 reports and cleaned up the majority of those sites. But considering the cleaning process costs up to $60 a square metre, another approach has been adopted.
While the graffiti hotline is really reactive and getting out there and cleaning up the graffiti that the community tells us about, we're hoping that the mural art project will be more of a proactive measure to combat graffiti.
On the whole, the murals do seem to be working, but whether they'll solve the problem remains to be seen. Their motto is "I can achieve," and they certainly can. These members of Head Start are preparing for a 10-kilometre walk on Saturday to raise money for and awareness of brain injuries. The idea came from Romeo Donolato, who survived a car crash in 1994 in which 2 of his friends died.
There is people like ourselves with brain injury who look the same as everybody else, but we act and relate to things differently. All we want is a chance to explain and to have a go.
Head Start was founded 22 years ago to help people with brain injuries recover and learn to live independently.
Lots of rehabilitation and lots of hard work, learning how to walk and talk and look after myself again.
The group says more money is needed to help its driver education programs that teach young people the dangers of speeding and drink driving, which are some of the main causes of brain injuries. Along the way, Head Start helps participants improve their self-esteem and social skills.
Instead of staying in my room all day, feeling sorry for myself, I got to meet a lot of new people with other brain injuries, and they have the same problems.
Everyone's got the opinion that it'll never happen to them, but it does, and it can happen to anyone, anytime.
The walk will start from the Katara Homemakers Centre at 8 a.m. on Saturday and finish at the Newcastle tram sheds. Kate Mitchell, NBN News. Professor John Forbes has a clear vision, a world without breast cancer, and he might just see it happen.
Every day there are 2 or 3 women who are alive having been diagnosed with breast cancer. 25 years ago they wouldn't have survived at all. That's why I do it.
Professor Forbes has led more than 50 breast cancer-related trials in Newcastle, dealing with both prevention and treatment. The most successful so far has been IBIS-1. The decade-long trial tested whether the drug tamoxifen could be used as a preventative medicine, and results were good, showing a 45% reduction in the incidence of breast cancer. Professor Forbes and his team are now working on IBIS-2, using postmenopausal women with an increased risk of getting cancer. Christine Kell is one of those participants. She simply takes 1 tablet a day, which is either an active tablet or a placebo, and submits to regular tests.
If anything's preventable and anything can be prevented, it's so easy. It's the only way to do it. It's something you can do to help other people.
Another trial, dubbed Later, the brainchild of Professor Forbes, is working to prevent repeated cases of breast cancer. 1 in 5 women will suffer a recurrence in the next decade.
Very simply, if a woman doesn't have breast cancer, she doesn't have a recurrence, doesn't have breast cancer, she's not going to die of it.
But it's not just clinical trials keeping Professor Forbes busy. One of his other goals is to determine whether breast cancer has any biomarkers. In other diseases, things like blood pressure and cholesterol form a vital part of prevention and treatment. The professor is hopeful something like breast density could turn out to be of similar use.
We're hopeful that we will find biomarkers for risk of breast cancer, response to treatment and prognosis outcome by working with colleagues around Australia in nanotechnology.
It's expected that 13,000 Australians will be diagnosed with breast cancer this year, but thanks to research like this, mortality rates are dropping at a rate of 2% a year. If that continues, there'll be no breast cancer deaths by 2040.
And with a motto like never accept the status quo as being adequate, Professor Forbes might achieve his dream.
Breast cancer is increasingly becoming a curable disease, and we want a world without breast cancer, and it's not a pipe dream.
Tomorrow night we go behind the scenes with Emeritus Professor Alan Roberts, who's helping the economic growth of the nation by streamlining the way bulk materials are stored and moved.
She's the ultimate yummy mummy. 30-year-old Karen Hillman-Varma has just been crowned Mrs World Australia. Today she undertook her first official job, a glamorous photo shoot in Newcastle.
Mrs World Australia is a pageant that's available to married women. A lot of us are over the age of 26, which is the cut-off age for a lot of beauty pageants, particularly in Australia. A lot of pageants you cannot have had any children as well. This one really embraces motherhood and parenthood and families.
While the international competition has been held since 1985, it's the first time Australia has joined in.
I was offered the opportunity to do a competition for married women, and I thought, what a great idea. And my brother's wife passed away 2 years ago from ovarian cancer, and I thought, I think we could probably put something unique here together.
And so she did. As the national winner, Mrs Hillman-Varma has also become the spokeswoman for Ovarian Cancer Australia. Over the next year, she'll devote her time and talent to raising awareness of the disease, as well as looking after 2-year-old Sahara, husband Vic, and completing a law degree.
I'm a juggler, so I figure if I can do this, I can do anything.
She'll carry Australian hopes with her next month when she heads off to Vietnam in pursuit of the world crown.
Just going to get on that plane and make sure I've got everything with me, and I'm going to do my best.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
Titled Talent is Not Enough, Danny Medeiros' book details his rugby league career to date, including those turbulent seasons under former coach Brian Smith. Medeiros reveals he initially wanted out of the Knights in 2007, a year before he did leave, after a bitter public falling out with the then club mentor. I thought what he said was condescending and belittling, wrote Medeiros in response to comments made by Smith in a newspaper article at the time, adding, "I'd had a gutful." Talked into staying, he describes their relationship after that as only businesslike. It had followed the Kirk Reynoldson affair, which led to a major contract dispute. What had happened, especially to Kirk, showed that NRL had become hard-nosed business, and I didn't want to be part of it anymore. He also questions the club's administration at the time. Surely the administration and the board knew the players were unhappy and that there was a lot of dressing room talk, but they never got involved. It was as if they gave Smithy the job to load the rifle and shoot all the bullets himself. Medeiros will be in Newcastle to promote the book early next month. Matt Gidley will be home tomorrow after his unsuccessful bid to win the English Super League final with St Helens at the weekend. He'll miss his brother Kurt. He's in camp with the Kangaroos and heads to England on Friday.
It's ironic that I'm going over there and he's going to be back in Australia for pretty much the same amount of time, but I'm hopefully going to catch him when he goes back over end of November.
A 15-year-old from Charlestown, Jake Higginbottom, came into the International fresh from winning the state junior title and armed with exemptions for both the New South Wales Open and PGA events, where he'll take on the pros.
It's great because it gives me helps me with a lot of experience and makes me play up to their standards.
It all added to a level of expectation today, even among the class field.
A little bit of pressure, but that's not too bad. I don't expect to win, so it's good.
He does hope to finish under par for the event, and that proved hard going today. He walked off 3 over. Considering the conditions, that wasn't too bad. Defending champion Brett Druitt was among many who found the going tough on day one. Not so Nerida Gregory. The 15-year-old Sydney sider had a great opening round, especially with the putter. That got her to 3 under through 14 holes, and when she struck her second on the following par 5, she was left with an eagle chance. Settling for birdie, Gregory still finished the day 5 under and quickly readjusted her radar for the rest of the tournament.
Come from New South Wales Golf Club, it's always windy out there, but it didn't pick up to about the 13th hole, so a bit lucky, but I made a few birdies in the wind, so that was good.
2 weeks ago, these ads hit the airwaves. Commissioned by the Australian Coal Association, they urge people to send emails to the federal government against the proposed emissions trading scheme. That statement, according to the mining union, couldn't be further from the truth.
We believe it is a scare campaign. There will be no jobs lost in the mining industry. In fact, there will be reports of their own indicate that there will be an expansion of the industry.
According to the Coal Association's ads, the ETS won't reduce global emissions, just negatively impact on the Australian mining industry. The association wants the government to relax the scheme.
We're not prepared to go hand in hand with the Coal Association seeking government subsidy for some of the most profitable mines in the world.
Madeline Bond, NBN News. Christine doesn't have full use of her hands, so this is all she can do to keep intruders out.
So I can close it with this hand like that. And then I sort of get down here. This is not an easy bit.
As a result, her front door is unlocked all day.
So it's not going to close because it's really windy.
The only barrier, a cotton snake.
So basically anyone could walk in at any time?
Exactly.
And what could you do if they did?
Nothing. All I'd say to them was, take what you want, but please leave me alone. But I can't fight anybody off. What am I going to do? I can't even hold a wooden spoon.
At night, Christine's carers lock the door for her, effectively sealing her inside until morning.
Because I'm terrified if a fire broke out, I can't get out.
She's lived like this for 5 years. In 2004, Christine's occupational therapist wrote to the housing department asking for an electronic lock to be fitted. She says her doorway was measured and a quote obtained, but that's as far as it's got.
I just get angry, very, very angry, because it's the way they've just keep pushing me back and pushing me back and pushing me back.
Christine is due to undergo surgery next month, which will leave her temporarily bedridden. She desperately wants the lock fitted before then.
I know it's a big job. It shouldn't have to come to this.
Late this afternoon, the Housing Department said the work had been delayed due to technical problems and differences with Christine, but that it should be complete by early November. Madeline Bond, NBN News.
We are overstaffed, we waste millions of dollars endlessly, and I think after her being there for the last 8 years, it's coming back to bite her.
For this group, walking from the Mayumari Healing Centre to State Parliament in Sydney will be an easy journey compared to dealing with the horrors of child abuse. Many are survivors who tried to receive treatment through the public health system.
We're trying to make a stance about how the mental health system, while it does have good qualities and such, but what actually does for the youth that have been abused isn't enough.
There just needs to be another way to help survivors, because at the moment, the way the mental health system does it, it doesn't work.
The group is hoping to secure government funding for Mayumari's programs, which it believes are more valuable than the public health option.
They don't listen to you. Every time I was upset, they put me in seclusion room and sedated me. They didn't try to talk to me about what was going on for me.
We've had studies done from the guests that have come, and there has been huge changes, much more than the mental health system has been able to do.
The group is expected to arrive in Sydney on Monday. Tyson Cottrell, NBN News.
Emeritus Professor Alan Roberts has what you might call a rare role. He works to improve the way bulk solids are moved. It may not sound or seem very interesting, but surprisingly it is, and it's vital.
It's quite unique. We travel the world, we know there's no other facility like this doing the range of things that we do.
For 35 years, Tundra Bulk Solids, a collaboration between Professor Roberts and the commercial arm of the University of Newcastle, has been solving the kind of problems big industries face when it comes to storing and transferring bulk materials. The company averages 160 consulting projects a year with a turnover of more than $10 million. The team mainly works with the mining and agriculture industries, but also in chemical processing, food production and even pharmaceuticals. In fact, with any business that stores or moves large amounts of materials. And it's at the Newcastle facility where all the experiments are conducted, like on this conveyor belt. The focus of Professor Roberts' work is to help companies streamline processes and make sure things run as smoothly as possible.
The mining industry uses tens of billions of litres of water each year to control dust. A model like this can reduce that dust by up to 90%, which would obviously provide huge environmental and financial benefits.
You see in the space up above there's dust swirling around. But when it gets entrained in that narrow throat of that venturi, it controls the density, so the dust coming out the lower end is significantly reduced.
This technology can also be used for controlling grain transfers. Professor Roberts is proud that his work is helping the economic growth of Australia, as well as training up-and-coming engineers. And the 79-year-old says he'll keep doing what he loves as long as he can keep up with the youngsters.
I'll keep going as long as I can because I enjoy it, and whatever I can do that and keep up with the young people, I'm quite happy to do that.
Tomorrow night we go inside the world of Associate Professor Darren Shafran, who's discovered a way to use the common cold virus to destroy melanoma cells.
This is the moment Joel Griffiths put his playing future in China in jeopardy. The obscene gesture came after his brother Ryan scored for Beijing to clinch a valuable 2-2 draw. Joel has been slapped with a 7-game ban, but there are only 3 games remaining in the Chinese season. It's the second suspension Griffiths has received during his time in China and puts any future deal with the club in doubt. It also casts a shadow over his return to the A-League, with the striker due to resume playing with the Jets on January 1st.
We would assume that any leftover residue of the suspension would be incurred by the Newcastle Jets, and certainly a concern for us at this point in time.
Beijing has an option to buy out Joel's contract, and despite speculation he's keen to stay in China, the Jets remain confident he'll be back in Newcastle colours.
We've planned our season on the fact that Joel will be with us come January, and we're still moving ahead with that, but we wait to see what happens in terms of the suspension.
Griffiths has always been a fan favourite, but at training today the current squad received plenty of attention from a South Australian youth team. The club already has 6 strikers, but Joel's former teammates say the more the merrier.
If Joel wants to come back, I mean, he'd be stupid to say no. Obviously, he's obviously done quite well here, and he's done quite well over there. So, I mean, if there's an opportunity for him to come, I'm sure the boys would be more than happy to have him.
Mitchell Hughes, NBN News. With a strong breeze blowing across Newcastle, Kurt Fearnley could be forgiven for thinking he never left the windy city of Chicago. Having completed his third straight win in that city's marathon, the Paralympic champion enjoyed the spoils. Heavily featured in the event's advertising campaign, Kurt was larger than life.
An old billboard that used to be famous for Michael Jordan's billboard, and then Dennis Rodman's for the Bulls, and then we drove by it. It's my big square head looking back at me.
He admits defending the title wasn't as nerve-wracking as meeting Oprah Winfrey after being called out of the audience at her show.
My mum's jaw nearly hit the floor, so it was a lot of fun. We had a conversation for a few minutes then, and just on top of the race, it was some really memorable experiences.
Having won every event he's entered this year, Fearnley admits he's nervous about winning a fourth straight New York Marathon, especially now organisers have invited the best wheelchair athletes on the planet.
The bigger the field, the more it means to you when you get that win up. So I'm just going to make sure I give everything I can. If I'm not fortunate enough to come home with the first place, then the guy's going to wake up pretty sore the day after the race.
Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
It's been nearly 2 years since 50-year-old Robert Pashkus and 41-year-old Stacey McMaugh were found dead. Police have identified suspects in the brutal bashing but don't have enough evidence to make arrests. The state government hopes offering a $100,000 reward for information leading to a conviction will give detectives what they need.
This was a vicious double murder, made worse by the fact that Ms McMaugh's 15-year-old son was the one who discovered the bodies.
Police admit possible links between Mr Pashkus and organised crime, specifically drug dealing, could be behind the deadly attack.
Stacey McMaugh had no involvement in any organised crime or drug activity, and she's unfortunately a victim of this crime in relation to perhaps what her de facto partner may have had some connection with.
Detectives believe one person murdered the couple while others may have watched on. They're also investigating whether the perpetrator was from Lake Macquarie.
It is a small community. A lot of people within that community know each other, and it is possible, yes.
Authorities hope the incentive of the reward will outweigh any fear witnesses may have about giving evidence.
People shouldn't be frightened to come forward.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
These stacker reclaimers are worth $45 million apiece and are the linchpin of the third coal loader. Each one has the capacity to move more than 10,000 tonnes of coal an hour.
Between them they receive all the coal that comes in and then put it on stockpile and then reclaim it and off to the shiploader for loading of the vessels. So they are the absolute the centrepiece.
It took 15 months to build the 2,500 tonne stackers. They arrived from Korea in August, and today the first one was powered up.
It's like a giant Meccano set putting it together. It's about 50,000 man hours that have been spent so far putting these together.
Part of the second stacker has been assembled, but it's a couple of months off being commissioned. The third coal loader is now 80% complete and is expected to begin its task in the first half of 2010. Once complete, it will have the capacity to move 30 million tonnes through the Port of Newcastle each year. Ports Minister Joe Tripodi was in town for today's commissioning and brought with him the news that trade through the port grew by 7% in the last quarter.
We're in excess of 25 million tonnes of throughput for the 3 months ending in September, and a great result. It's a new record.
Lauren Bladwell, NBN News.
I'm over the moon with the new house. I can't believe it. It's been a long time coming, but
Naomi Roskell captured these images as she was driving through rising floodwater on the evening of June 8, 2007. The mother of one had just taken refuge at a Lambton service station when she noticed a woman and her 2 children trapped in their car by the raging torrent.
There's no way I could see someone just get carried away like that and not do anything.
Naomi tied herself to a pole with a rope and waded into the chest-deep water.
I got the first child, I've got them off the safest side of the car I could think of and brought them through the water and went back and then back for the mother and they were safe.
Shortly after, she was back in the water again, this time to help an elderly man barely hanging on to his 4-wheel drive.
I actually sat on the bull bar of the 4-wheel drive and we waded out into the water. I reached out as far as I possibly could to grab him and pulled him onto the bull bar so that he'd be safe. Otherwise he'd have been gone.
She also helped 3 school children who had found themselves in the floodwater. Today, Naomi returned to the service station for the first time since that night.
Kind of feels like that weight's kind of gone back on me again. Yeah, it's overwhelming.
Tomorrow, she'll travel to Sydney to accept the 3rd award honouring her bravery, the Humane Society of Australia's Galligan Award. Lauren Bladwell, NBN News.
I'm just going to explain what's going to happen today. We're going to get you to walk along this nice straight piece of footpath. We're going to put a simulator on you. You're going to get a bit of cataracts.
And so begins my White Cane Challenge. Goggles on, lights out.
So everything will be blurry. Oh wow. All the detail will be taken away? Gone.
With John and Fiona from Guide Dogs New South Wales ACT as instructors, it's time to get mobile with the cane.
Okay, when you're ready. Okay. That's great.
Okay, nice and relaxed if you can.
Don't I look relaxed?
No, you don't.
The cane remains the primary mobility tool for people with vision impairment, but it does take a bit of getting used to. Finding the traffic lights proves tricky.
Oh.
But as other senses heighten and concentration increases, confidence builds.
Okay, you've got a person standing next to you.
Hello. Hello.
Bustling Beaumont Street is a collision of noise and obstacles.
Gotcha.
And then the full blindfold goes on for an extra challenge. It's just a taste of what people with vision impairments deal with daily.
They start off absolutely petrified of going around their environment. At the end of it, we get these great success stories of people catching trains, going interstate, overseas.
And while the cane and guide dogs are popular, technology is forging ahead with the likes of GPS.
116 James Street /BRG Street.
Another tool to help navigate life with a vision impairment.
What possible benefit could come from the common cold? It's an illness that strikes most people at least once a year, but Associate Professor Darren Shafran has found a way to make it do some good.
What we tried to do is to find relatively harmless viruses which circulated in the community and redirect them in a concentrated manner to a particular cause, and that's targeting solid tumours.
Professor Shafran and his team from the Hunter Medical Research Institute stumbled upon the discovery during an experiment for a colleague, finding that the cold virus can actually destroy melanoma cells. The group was originally testing the effectiveness of using harsher viruses to attack tumours and was shocked by what it found.
Then we stumbled on, we put a really harmless virus, which we didn't expect to do anything. And then within half a day, this virus had completely obliterated the cells, much to our surprise.
You can see that process here. The black arrows show prostate cancer cells being infected by the virus, then being destroyed, leaving normal healthy tissue intact. The field is called virotherapy and is particularly exciting in terms of cancer treatment because it appears to have less toxicity and fewer side effects than traditional treatments. The work on this discovery happens in the Viralytics lab in Newcastle using all sorts of technology like this wave bag.
And allows us to produce a lot more virus in a small concentrated area than using a lot more incubator space with tissue culture flasks.
It helps make a product called Cavitac, which has been effective in lab tests and animal models and is now in early phase human trials.
The next stage for the technology developed by Associate Professor Shafran and his team is to seek approval from authorities in the US to initiate further clinical trials over there.
I think viruses always have a bad name, and as you know, viruses have been studying the immune system of man a lot longer than we have. And viruses are very good tools historically for actually studying mechanisms within cells.
It's estimated Cavitac will be ready to hit the market in the next 4 or 5 years. And considering cancer affects 88,000 Australians annually, the magnitude of this discovery can't be underestimated. Tomorrow night we meet Professor Robert Clancy, who's developed a vaccine to help prevent one of the biggest causes of death in Australia today.
Until 1989, harness racing in Newcastle was held at the showground, a facility that was past its use-by date.
It was a tiny little track. It wasn't suitable for mobile racing. It was all standing starts, but the industry was heading towards mobile racing, so they couldn't race there.
Following the modification of the International Sports Centre to cater for the creation of the Newcastle Knights, land was set aside for what would become one of the best tracks in Australia.
The tracks had a great reputation from day one. The first night meeting there, they set a new South Wales mile record, and since then we've just held national records, age records.
Life member Billy Tomlin was among the massive crowd on opening night in 1989. Having worked at the showground, he then helped to build the Paceway before becoming its curator.
I was working at the pit then, and I took my long service leave, took holidays to get it going.
This Saturday night, Tomlin will be the only trainer from that meeting 20 years ago who's entering a runner in the $10,000 Anniversary Cup. 8-year-old gelding NJ's Cam has drawn wide in the feature event, but Tomlin remains confident.
What about your chances on Saturday night?
He's always a chance because he's an honest horse.
Mitchell Hughes, NBN News. They dominated possession and had plenty of chances, but the W League Jets still came home from Perth empty-handed. With no goals in 2 games, coach Wayne O'Sullivan says changes will be made across the park.
There's no hiding place. If you're 15 or you're 29 as our senior player, then you're expected to take the same responsibility.
Several former Sydney players moved to the Jets this season, adding extra spice to Saturday's clash.
They've got a very strong team. You know, they've touted as one of the favourites for the league by a lot of people. but I know the girls are very confident.
The Jets will play at Energy Australia Stadium, a venue that isn't as daunting for the girls in Season 2.
Personally, I feel a lot more settled this year. Last year I was a bit nervous going into some of the games with some of the older girls, but we've got a tight group this year and everyone's really close.
Meanwhile, the Jets men's team has re-signed keeper Ben Kennedy until the end of the 2011-2012 season. The 22-year-old local junior spent 2 seasons as Ante Kovic's understudy before earning the top job during the club's Asian Champions League campaign. Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
Police roadblocks were set up 150 metres either side of the Hickory Road house as detectives began their investigation. Around 4 a.m. they'd been alerted by neighbours claiming to have heard what police only describe as a disturbance. When officers arrived, they found the body of a woman in her 40s inside. Police spent the morning questioning neighbours as forensic squad officers photographed in and around the home. 27-year-old Craig Catley of Belmont was later arrested by police, who'll only say he's a relative of the dead woman. Officers also haven't specified how the woman died. Catley was taken to Belmont Police Station for questioning and was later charged with 1 count of murder. He appeared in Belmont local court this afternoon where he was refused bail, with police saying they have genuine concern for his psychiatric well-being. He's due to appear in court again on November 27. Blake Doyle, NBN News.
The threat climate change poses to one of the Hunter Valley's most profitable industries isn't being taken lightly. The Hunter Valley Wine Industry Association, along with Hunter Councils, compiled the report, which assesses possible impacts on the region between 2020 and 2080.
In our industry, we've decided to be proactive on this. We see it as a serious threat.
The case study found the number of extreme heat days will increase, while minimum temperature days will decrease. That change could affect grape health, chilling and harvest times and increase pest numbers. The report predicts more frost in spring, something that could cause crop loss and vine damage. It also found extreme weather could shorten growing seasons, delay pruning and cause erratic bud bursts.
Part of the case study was presenting these climate change projections for the industry and giving the industry the information in the way that they needed it so they could decide what their risks were.
But Vignerons say because of the valley's already variable climate, they're well placed to deal with any problems.
We've already got the management tools in place to deal with this, and we're just going to be more prepared now as a result of this study.
But not everyone is convinced climate change will impact on the valley.
I think there's a lot of hysteria about this. There's a lot of people made a lot of money out of it.
3 more case studies are planned. Madeline Bond, NBN News.
They've been labelled as clean energy alternatives, but today's inquiry heard of a number of concerns surrounding the establishment of wind farms in rural New South Wales.
There's been a lot of complaint from the community about the impacts of the wind turbines and other complaints.
One development on the agenda, an energy farm proposed near Scone. Key stakeholders were present at the inquiry, voicing their concerns about the project.
Our major concern is the desecration of the Hunter Valley. When people visit us, I've had international visitors, interstate visitors, the first thing they say is, it's fantastic, it's magnificent, the backdrop is just unbelievable. And that will be destroyed.
The inquiry, chaired by Greens MLC Ian Cohen, also discussed the economic costs of establishing the energy farm, which includes 42 giant turbines and 21 hectares of solar panels.
There are people making submissions that they're very happy to see alternative forms of income on rural properties.
My particular property has been quoted by local real estate agents, not by official valuers, that the probable devaluation will be something like 20%, and that will be permanent.
What we really want to see is the development at Scone stopped, full stop.
Tyson Cottrell, NBN News.
It's been a great honour. It's been a quick 10 years though, so we're happy to reunite all together and catch up with everyone. So it will be a happy day, I hope.
COPD, or chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, is the fourth biggest cause of death in the world today. But that will all change if Professor Robert Clancy has anything to do with it. The professor started working in the biotechnology industry in the 1980s in mucosal immunology, and he's made massive headway, developing a vaccine that can ease and even prevent the acute flare-ups that lead to COPD deaths.
The long-term outcome of our studies has been that we've been able to reduce admission into hospital by up to 90% in the studies we've completed.
By looking at the way the body's normal bacteria react with the airways, Professor Clancy has developed an oral vaccine through Hunter immunology, which basically makes a person's own immune functions work better.
We're actually accelerating and enhancing a normal protective process by giving a product which contains a great number of these very important bacteria.
There is still a way to go with the vaccine. Professor Clancy has one major study to complete and is currently negotiating with major pharmaceutical companies in Europe. But he's confident it will become registered and available over the next few years. And while getting accolades isn't a motivating factor, he admits he got a kick out of being recognised as a leading innovator.
I guess it's sort of one of the culminating things in my own career to be recognised by my own peers.
But there's something else Professor Clancy is passionate about, and that's maps. He's collected thousands of printed antique maps dating back from 1482 to 1950 and has even found time to write 2 books about it, with another one on the way.
They didn't have colour printing, and so these are all hand coloured. And this is amazing because it's got Australia in at both ends.
Most people would consider writing books a full-time job, but for Professor Clancy, it's just a hobby, one that he has to squeeze in late at night.
It's been slow going for Lube Milicevic, whose heel refuses to heal. Still unable to run, he's been ruled out of Sunday's game, and that may only be the start.
There is a little bit of concern that it might take a little bit longer than what we had all anticipated.
At least the coach has options to cover for the experienced defender, and the most likely replacement is shaping up as the Jets' youngest player, Ben Kantarovski.
Branko spoke to me about playing centre back and sort of, if a job needs to be done there, then we'll do the job.
Of the three young Socceroos back from the World Cup, the 17-year-old remains in the sights of overseas clubs, but at study and this season, he's focusing on for now.
No, nothing yet, just sort of concentrating on the finishing of the HSC and then finish out the season and see what happens.
Marko Jesic is definitely staying in Newcastle next season after the club signed him up today. It's a big show of faith in the 20-year-old who's recovering from a third knee operation and is unlikely to play a game this season.
We have potentially one of the best young players in the country by a mile.
Well, it's taken a lot of weight off my shoulders. Now I don't really have to think about coming back too early from this injury, even though it's my third one.
And in a bid to boost crowd numbers, the club is staging a fan gathering after full time on Sunday, but a win would be an even better tonic.
We're all very pleased with the way we've been playing and the performances, but we need to make sure the results can match up our performances.
Jim Callanan, NBN News. He's helped more junior golfers than he can remember, and Jack Newton's development work continued today with the final round of the international event at Cessnock. Michael Williams started the day 3 shots clear. Oliver Goss was his closest rival. At 15, Charlestown's Jake Higginbottom is already making a name for himself. The state junior champion was never expected to win the international, but it didn't stop him from giving it a fair shake on the final day. Sydney's Nerida Gregory only had a poor third round to blame for not being closer to the top spot in the girls, and her good run with the putter continued today. She was always playing for second though, as Thailand's Thitapar Suwannayura maintained her excellent form. Despite the testing wins, shots like this to set up birdie showed why she started the day with a 9-stroke lead. One of the class internationals among the field, she's certainly one to look out for in the future.
Just 3 months ago, Neil Slater was poring over the latest designs for the Nobby's Lighthouse redevelopment, but he's now decided to walk away from the project after spending 8 years and $320,000 on it. Mr Slater and the Nobby's Lighthouse Consortium originally proposed to build a 140-seat restaurant and 8 accommodation rooms at the site, but had to downscale after a handful of residents objected.
The state government got involved and we went down to 70-seat restaurant and 8 rooms. By the time the federal government was involved, it was 6 rooms and 45 seats.
Making the project economically unviable. He's now handed the plans and development application over to the Port Corporation.
I really want the project to go forward, so we can't make it happen, but I'd rather someone do it.
Mr Slater says his decision not to go ahead with the restoration could impact on other potential developments in the city.
I certainly wouldn't get involved in a heritage site, and I wouldn't be sort of asking anyone else to put their money there.
Ultimately, Mr Slater's decision to shelve his plans means that this is as close as anybody will be able to get to the lighthouse for at least the foreseeable future. Madeline Bond, NBN News.
Went really well. Everyone's happy and proud of our achievements with Head Start and just trying to raise money and awareness.
Winless and yet to score a goal this season, the Jets were looking to break a couple of droughts in their first appearance at home, but Sydney was intent on maintaining their pain. For the second week in a row, a defensive mix-up cost Newcastle, with Lena Karma scoring few easier than this. It was Sydney with much of the running against a home side that took time to find their range. A yellow card did little to stem frustrations for the hosts, while finally a chance fell at the feet of Hayley Crawford. When things broke for Emma Stewart, only desperate defence denied her from scoring Newcastle's first for the season. Alison Logue went to great lengths to keep Sydney from scoring again before the break, the keeper using every inch to keep it 1-0 at half-time. She got little rest in the second as Sydney began full of running again. Newcastle offered only rare chances on goal, while Lauren Mahoney's game ended in the arms of others when her right leg gave way to a calf muscle tear. Beaten 1-0, Newcastle remain without a win or a goal from 3 games this season.